Gold ran and now it's Bitcoin's turn. And the gold chart that you see here, as well as the Bitcoin chart, are absolutely telling that story. ADA on the weekly, the explosive bull market Cardano move, it's very simply setting up. All indicators are pointing to that direction. Ethereum on the daily chart, kind of showing a nice little signal as we're talking about gold topping out, Bitcoin continuing a parabolic move into its own bull market. Ethereum painting the picture for altcoins on the daily on what to maybe anticipate volatility into this bull market. So that means upside and downside volatility. And I want to explain why that is in this video. So please hit the subscribe, hit the like on the way in. I appreciate you. And if you're trying to prepare for this bull market, get into our intelligence system, hit the link below, 40% off right now. Would love to have you on board as a member. Let's start with the gold chart. We've talked about this before. I saw Anthony's post over here and he's saying gold ran and now it is Bitcoin's turn. I couldn't agree more because this is something that we've been discussing. And that is when gold starts kind of moving, this happened last cycle, gold's moving to the upside and tops out. This is kind of a precursor to altcoins and Bitcoin even. And so we saw this happen last cycle, August 2020. And we're going to look at that on the Bitcoin and even altcoin charts in just a moment. But that was gold topping out here and then kind of consolidating. That's number one. You can just see gold is going kind of crazy right now out of this entire multi-year consolidation. But what's intriguing about it, if you just look at this from a structural standpoint, this looks like a Bitcoin chart. And we are, if we think of this as a Bitcoin chart, we're kind of like right here in terms of Bitcoin. Let's go look at a Bitcoin chart. Here's a Bitcoin chart. So you see that structure, that very similar structure on the Bitcoin chart looking very similar to the gold chart we just looked at, and Bitcoin has not had its move. So here is back in last cycle when gold was topping out for Bitcoin. We just looked at it, right? It was like around October 2020. Is that when it was? We're topping out August 2020, September, October. So August, September, right? We're looking at right around here, September, October, going into November. This is the Bitcoin move. So obviously Bitcoin is, at that moment was not breaking all-time high yet. That is one thing that is different this time. Bitcoin is at all-time high, but you can just see the upside potential for Bitcoin seems to be very much in play for this parabolic move similar to what gold just did. So when I see Anthony talking about this, gold ran and now it's Bitcoin's turn, I agree. We like to think Bitcoin's at all-time high. It ran. And it has ran in the sense of it exited the bear market, right? This is just a very nice uptrend of higher highs and higher lows. But in the context of previous Bitcoin bull markets, we've not had, I think, that powerful bull run burst. And gold just had it. Now, I think it's coming for Bitcoin as well. And with that being said, I think it's coming for altcoins, maybe even more powerfully so, because that coiling is happening like no other cycle before. So just on the altcoin charts, and then I want to dive into Cardano and also Ethereum. On the altcoin charts, when we're thinking about that gold topping out last cycle, that was what? We said August, September, October starts falling. Well, this is what altcoins were doing at that moment. Notice they were still around, and this is the altcoin market cap chart, 253% from all-time highs. So right now, we're not 253% from all-time highs, but we're still away from all-time highs, and that's bothering a lot of people. But we're 36% away from all-time highs. So last time at this cycle, when gold was kind of topping out, Bitcoin was doing its thing, really, guess what? Altcoins still not making that move. But look what happened shortly after all of that. Altcoins made the move. This is setting up in a very similar fashion. So I want to talk about a couple different altcoins in this video. I want to start with Cardano, and then I want to look at Ethereum. In context to Cardano, similar thing. Here's the time frame for Cardano in context to gold and what we just looked at, August, September, October, and then explosive move. So here we are, gold potentially getting ready to consolidate, waiting for the explosive move. Ethereum's going to give us hints of time frame here, if this is going to happen. But on the Cardano chart, as we are waiting, on this macro, on the weekly, we're going to kind of watch how this weekly candle closes. We're trying to see if we can close above the 20-week. This is massive. a massive area that really separates bull markets from bear markets. This happened at the move last cycle before the bull market. I've been talking about that. But what I want to talk about is the short term for ADA in this video, because there's a lot going on now, I think, in the short term that we can kind of pay attention to get a sense of, is Cardano about to make that breakout move? And I think a lot of ADA holders are wondering that. And we have a lot of nice shorter term price areas to watch on ADA charts. So let's start. I want to start with this very quick clip, and this is from 11 days ago. Check it out. Strong, and now we're getting kind of this breakout out of this trend. That's an inverse head and shoulders with a downward sloping neckline as far as I'm concerned. I always anticipate, and we do multi-year patterns, which we're about to look at on Ethereum. I always anticipate pullbacks and throwbacks. For ADA, yes, we want to see it keep going, and maybe it will. But for ADA right now, I would even at the very least, as we're kind of entering this massive macro resistance area, all this red, at the very least, potentially get a throwback. So if we go to the ADA chart, there it is. There's the throwback. And what's, I think, most compelling about that throwback is this was another clip from 7 days ago. I'm not going to show the clip, but you can see me charting a Fibonacci throwback area, ADA right around 79 to 80 cents. That green channel was a throwback area. So if we go to the ADA chart right now, you can see ADA not only threw back to the neckline of this inverse head and shoulders, but also revisited that Fibonacci, higher low Fibonacci. So now we're kind of in an interesting area because we're bouncing off all that support, which is very good to see. And we got the throwback after the 20s crossing above the 50. It's something we always talk about. And now we're kind of making a move to the upside. There's not this absolute bullish confirmation that we're right now going to get the explosive move. But there are things we can look out for. And one of them on the immediate short term is literally where Cardano is right now. So this is something to watch. The 200-day moving average is right around 81.5 cents. And you can kind of already see ADA struggling right here. We might see a higher low kind of coming into play. We might trickle down again. Be very careful on all of these altcoins right now, and even Bitcoin. But if we get a move to the upside, it's kind of what I wanted to explore. I wanted to say the target to the upside is around $1 out of the inverse head and shoulders, right? So we got the throwback to the inverse head and shoulders. Now we're going to look for a continuation to the target of $1. First step we want to see is ADA break that area, which is the 200-day moving average. And really, it's kind of this lower high area from swing high to swing low. It really is kind of this lower high area that ADA's in. We want to see ADA really on the very short term, and I mean in the next day or so, escape this area as opposed to starting to fall once again. So we want to see ADA escape that area. $1 is the next target. That becomes so meaningful on the ADA charts because at that moment, we're testing all of this area. We're testing the upper range now of the bull market doors. And now we can start bringing into play the potential for this type of move, the beginning of ADA's bull market that we saw last cycle. I don't know. Is all of that going to happen right now? Or is it going to be a little bit over here? We have to allow for all of these altcoins to consolidate. And I know, and I'm an altcoin holder. I'm an ADA holder. I know that we don't like thinking about that. We want the explosive move now, but I just want to say right now, everybody, there's a possibility where this sideways, what are altcoins doing, frustration, that continues. This might continue. And I want to use Ethereum as kind of a demonstration. On the macro, on these charts, all things for me are pointing to incredibly bullish. But let me explain something. As Ethereum right now is even testing this lower trend line, we want to see the break above the trend line. This is a massive multi-year trend line we discussed in last night's video. The 50-day is very confluent, just above where Ethereum is by like $100 right now. We need to see Ethereum start getting separation from those areas, an explosive move. The Ethereum daily chart is something that's it's really kind of sticking out to me right now. And let me explain why. If you look at this, all of this resistance at this lower trendline area, even the 200-day, very similar to ADA, notice what the momentum oscillators are doing, right? Here is Ethereum about to potentially break above the previous swing high. So what I mean by that is this swing high here. If Ethereum makes a move to the swing high and we have a higher high, look at this oscillator. This is not, in my view, like some bear market indicator. But in relation to what I was just talking about, the potential for more patience being needed, I want to show you something, especially because it really brings into play everything we just talked about, even with gold and everything. If we zoom all the way out and we actually go back to that area, what we were just looking at, right? August, September, October 2020, gold's trying to top out. Notice what Ethereum was doing during all that. That's a few months of time. It was breaking to the upside, overbought on this daily RSI, kind of making a pullback and then kind of trying to get higher. And you see all of that price action there, a little bit of a bearish divergence, actually. And Ethereum had to keep consolidating sideways before the actual move. We are in a very similar area right now. I don't like saying that, but if Ethereum doesn't make the very powerful breakout and we start really getting this power move on the RSI even, you can see how we might start seeing some similar bearish divergence and we might have to start dipping again, consolidating more at the moving averages. We're testing the lower 2000s for Ethereum. People are getting frustrated again. I don't think that's a long-term bearish signal, but this could be more of a short to mid-term thing that says, hey, altcoins are very close. However, just be prepared for continued consolidation before that big move happens. I just wanted to throw that out there because it's obviously very in play when we're just looking at very standard indicators on these charts. But with that being said, let's see if ADA, Ethereum can break these shorter term areas. Now, if Bitcoin continues to make a move to the upside, right, we might see all this happen. We might see the breakouts on these altcoins. I'm just saying, let's wait for confirmations. And as we kind of zoom out, you all know I'm cautiously optimistic, I guess you could say. I'm very macro bullish, but on these short-term charts, I think it's a good idea just to watch all of these areas and wait for these charts to play out. That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm waiting for the confirmations, and that's all I can do right now. So those are my thoughts today on Bitcoin, Cardano, Ethereum. A lot to watch. There's a lot going on, everybody, but the markets right now I would say very exciting, at least for me. As you know, we are all sitting around patient. If you're an altcoin holder, let's continue to watch. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please hit the subscribe, hit the like, and again, hit that link below, 40% off right now, Crypto Capital Venture Intelligence. Get ready for the bull move. I'll see you in the next video. God bless.